It's 9:30. I'll call the meeting to order. Let's just get straight to work on the budget. Deputy Warden Peterson.
Thank you, Warden. Moved by Peterson, second by Councillor Mayberry. Resolved that the agenda be approved.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And Councillor Tate.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Palmer. Resolved that Section 11.3.1 of the Procedure Bylaw, which reads presentations by county staff at meetings shall endeavor to be a maximum of 15 minutes, be waived for the purpose of budget and business plan deliberations.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Councillor Palmer.
Moved by myself, seconded Councillor Accioni. Resolved that the motion to adjourn the special meeting of November 2024 be extended to 2:30 p.m.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Not seeing any. No adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting as it's a special meeting. No public meetings. Delegations, presentations, and consideration thereof. Staff presentations regarding the 2025 business plans and budget. And I will turn it over to, I don't know, CAO Adley or Director Brugner, whoever wants to start the ball rolling.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see everybody made it through the fog this morning. I think we have one empty seat. Hopefully, she'll be arriving safely soon. In any event, we've got a lot on our agenda today. We're going to start off with going through a preview of what's in your budget report. We'll take a look at the budget process that's undertaken. We'll take a look at a few of the highlights, review the capital plan, asset management plan, business plans and budgets by department. We'll be starting those right after I skim through some highlights here. And then we'll also take a look at the library budget, court security budget, an overall summary and any pending adjustments that may have risen since our last report. So getting right into it, and we are going to be making
Warden, is there a way to have Ms. Buckner's mic turned up? I can just, or the speakers turned up. It's just right on the edge there.
I honestly don't know.
I've moved closer. Is this better?
Oh, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay. So in terms of the budget process, we start in June of the prior fiscal year. So we initiated a budget survey over the course of the summer. It concluded at the end of August. And then during that time, concurrently, all the departments are preparing their draft business plan and budget based on the strategic plan and based on, what we've, our longer term plans are. And then at the end of that process, start of September is when senior management team receives those draft department submissions as well as the community's budget survey results. And then we do a peer review of all of what's been submitted and determine what it is we're prepared to present to council. And that's where we are today. So we did circulate the draft budget report to council at their November 13th meeting. So we will be meeting today and again next week on Monday, and then give final approval consideration at council's December 11th meeting. So taking a look at the budget development, so we start with the 2024 approved budget. We look at any items like how to maintain the service levels of the previous year's approved budget in the 2025 budget, as well as any significant new programs or services. And items that are non-recurring in nature or one-time items. We look at service level changes, so any changes we see that are arising or in need within the community. And then we take a look at capital contributions, what we need to sustain our capital, and phase in impacts of service levels and new initiatives to be realized in the future year budget. And that typically pertains to staffing. So we budget for the staff for the full year, but then we build in a provision for gapping to indicate at what time of the year we expect to be hiring that position. And then we also have to incorporate any in-year approvals or carryovers from the prior year. So in 2024, You'll notice that there are a few in-year approvals, most predominantly related to the Woodingford Lodge Master Plan, that are affecting the 2025 budget. And then we take a look at expansion of our capital assets and any studies we need to review and implement those expansions. So all in, and with some removals of those one-time items from 2024, will produce the 2025 draft budget. So taking a look at the next slide, it illustrates the report presentation that you'll find within the budget binder. So we start with the, you can see that the groups all align by revenues and then expenses that those revenues are funding. You can see that the columns along the top of the charts show the budget changes between 2024 budget and the 2025 draft budget. So we clearly identify those year-over-year changes in the far right-hand rows, or columns rather. And then the next page goes on to show, so on this page you see the operating revenues and expenses. Then you can see where we come up with the net operating costs of that program. And then next we illustrate how the capital, what capital costs are related, or what the capital plan looks like in terms of all the expenses there, and then what revenues it's taking to fund those expenses, and then any net capital. So on the next slide then, we can see the overall summary. So the total of all of the revenues, the total of all the expenses, and those programs that we track surplus or deficit, we'll have a line for that, and then a line that illustrates the impact on the levies. So the next slide, taking a look at a breakdown or a bit of a summary in terms of what the budget for that particular division looks like. This helps identify the operating expenses, the capital expenses, and the revenues, and then what is derived as the final amount to be funded, and that's taxation. And this is broken down, again, by those one-time items, the service level changes, capital contributions, and development charge exemptions. So this level of detail will be provided for each department and or division, depending on the significance of the program. So as we go through the budget binder, the budget highlights start on page 10, and as a reminder, as we're going through our presentations today and again on Monday of next week, you can refer to the page number that's on the slide to get more details in that area. So this obviously is on page 10 of your budget binder. So taking a look at the strategic priorities that are being addressed in the 2025 budget, you can see that there's 119 notable goals and objectives and resource allocations to support the county's strategic goals. Most predominantly showing up in the business plan goals and objectives. And then we have 7 new initiative projects that are proposed in the 2025 budget. However, one of those projects being the Thornton Wellhead Naturalization Project, it actually touches 2 of these pillars, being enhancing environmental sustainability and fostering progressive government. So that therefore makes up a total of 8, where we only have 7 projects. And then in terms of addressing these 3 pillars, we have 16 of our additional FTEs that are touching the environmental sustainability and progressive government pillars. On the next slide, this really breaks down the budget in a more bite-sized piece. It allows us to take a look at the impacts on the levies, the rates, and what capital budgets are, what the capital budget is that is included in those budgets. So the dark blue bar along the top of the chart there illustrates the levies. And we have 3 separate levies, one being the general levy, one being the library levy, and then a separate one for court security grant levy. So the library and the grant security levies are across all area municipalities with the exception of the city of Woodstock, simply because the city of Woodstock has their own library that they fund, as well as the court security grant special levy is designed to offset some of the Woodstock Police Services operational costs related to court security and prisoner transportation as it relates to the Oxford County Courthouse. And so this is to offset what the County of Oxford has identified as an inadequate funding from the provincial government for a provincial funding, provincial service. However, within the Police Services Act, the local police service having jurisdiction over the area in which the court is situated is fully responsible for providing court security and prisoner transportation. So let's get down to the numbers. Taking a look at the general levy, in 2025, we're projecting a $93 million levy. That's a $10.4 million increase over last year. The library levy, we're looking at a $5.7 million levy, and that's $500,000 increase over last year. And in terms of the court security grant, that's a levy of $123,430, and that's a $40,000 increase over last year's. And although the percentage increase on that court security levy is significant, the dollar amount really isn't. And that is a calculated allocation to the city too, and that was predetermined by a steering committee about 7 or 8 years ago, and has seemed to serve us well. And during COVID, when there really was no courts operating in person, that really dropped. And so now we're back on an uptick because this is based on a lagging calculation. So that's why you're seeing that change upticking in 2025. So overall, the general levy is increasing 12.6%, the library levy by 10%, and I mentioned the court security levy increase already. So collectively, those increases total 12.5%, again, for any of the municipalities that are paying all three of those levies. In terms of the city of Woodstock, they would see only the 12.6% increase on the general levy. And then in terms of what that looks like with respect to impact on the average property owner, or average residential property owner, the general levy will be a 10.3% increase. The library levy would be a 7.9% increase, and the court security levy would be 46% increase, with a total cumulative increase of 10.1% on the average household. And that's due to the assessment growth that we've identified. That's based on preliminary measures and a report provided to council at their November 13th meeting, indicating that we had fairly substantial growth in the county in 2024 that will help spread out the increase in the taxes over more assessment base in 2025. So in looking at the rates budget, you can see similarly our revenue requirement for funding the water and wastewater systems in Oxford will require $48.3 million in 2025. That's a $3.6 million increase over last year. In terms of rate increases, that's an 8.8% increase. And from an average household perspective, based on 150 cubic meters per use annually, we're looking at anywhere from 29% to 14.3%, and that's going to be by system. So a range between all the systems would vary to a certain degree. So in the capital budget, you can see the gold-colored or the brownish-colored pillar there. That represents our capital budget. It is coming in at $131 million for 2025, and it's funded through those separate levies and the rates budgets. Again, predominantly funded through reserves. So taking a look at the next slide, the expenditure distribution for our 2025 draft budget. This year we're looking again at water and wastewater being the highest expenditure requirement of 29%. followed shortly thereafter by roads at 16%, childcare at 10, and Woodingford Lodge at 10 as well. And the next slide indicates how the budget is being funded. So this year, you'll see that grants and transfers represent 26.4% of our revenues coming in to fund our requirements. And this is the first year, in 2025 will be the first year that grants and government transfers have exceeded our property tax revenues. So property tax revenues are coming in, again, very close behind at 23.4%, and then transfers from reserves at 21.1%, and user fees and charges at 20.6%. In terms of our new initiatives, I addressed those a bit earlier, just in terms of numbers. We have 7. You can find more details on each one of these on the page numbers indicated on the right-hand column there. Just quickly, they represent Thornton Wellfield Naturalization Project. We're looking at preparing benchmark data, traffic data for the assessment of implementing an automated speed enforcement program. We're also looking at implementing storm sewer closed-circuit television inspection programs throughout our storm sewers. And in Tillsonburg, water main swabbing and sanitary derouting program. And wastewater electronic logbooks, so modernizing the way we capture our data and maintain appropriate records to meet ministry requirements. And looking at improvements to the technology in this chamber for council meetings. And also investing in leadership development and succession planning programming. So again, you can find those details on the respective page numbers in the binder. In terms of what it's going to take from a human resource perspective to deliver the 2025 budget, and looking at that, we're looking at 21.9 FTE additions. So if you look at the chart on the left-hand side of the screen there, we started in 2024 with an approved plan of 683.1 FTEs. We backed out the temporary FTEs that were only required in 2024 of 5.7, and then we added the in-year approvals. And these ones were predominantly related to the Woodingford Lodge Master Plan, as I mentioned before. 6.5 FTE for a rounding out as a base start for 2025's business plan and budget of 683.9 FTEs. So with the addition of the 21.9, the full complement for 2025 is proposed to be 705.8. And again, plenty more details by description, by position, is available on page 74 of your budget binder. So taking a look at those budget impacts, you can see that the black bar on the top of this chart illustrates what our levy increase is over 2025. So you can see the rates increase and the taxation increase there, and the 12.5% taxation increase. And then we break it down, how much are new initiatives. So you can see how much they are there, a total $2.6 million, how much is being funded by reserves, how much by other. That $2.1 million is mostly debt funding. And then how much is not funded by those other sources. Then how much of that is being funded by rates and taxation, to give you a sense of how much those new initiatives are putting pressure on the rates and taxation. Similarly, one-time items total $4.2 million. You can see how they're impacting rates and taxation there. Service level requirements, $2.5 million. You can see that they're having a significant impact on taxation, 1.8%, or 1.8 million rather, at 2.1%. Capital contributions, so this is increasing our contributions to our asset management plan allocation gapping, so $778,000 or 0.9% on taxation. And initiative gapping, so this is what we're saving this year, what but will be included and reflected in then the 2026 budget. So we just need to be cognizant of that, how that initiative gapping is affecting future years. And then the in-year approvals and carryovers mentioned earlier, total 1.6 million, 570 funded by reserves, just under $1 million by other sources, and 110 by taxation. And then our minor capital and infrastructure, total of $38.6 million, just below $25 million funded from reserves, and 12.3 from other sources, and 1.3 from taxation. Other sources most often is debt and or contributions from developers and or benefiting property owners. So overall, the budget impacts are in the light blue bar there, sitting at 5%. And then to get down to what our actual base budget increase is, we removed the prior year non-recurring items, prior year initiative gapping, we identified that, and our development charge exemptions. So all in, you can see our base budget increase is just about 3.5 million on rates and 2.3 million on taxation, for a total taxation base increase of 2.6%. And again, more details on what each of those new initiative and one-time item and service level items are can be found on page 6 of the binder. Looking at investments in 2025, as mentioned earlier, we've got 7 new initiatives to advance the strategic plan. We're adding to capital contributions. We're supporting affordable housing. We're supporting initiatives that attract and retain staff. We are planning for growth. You'll see that throughout the budget, demonstrating need for increased service levels as well as FTEs to address growth. Maintaining service levels. Again, some of those new initiatives and new FTEs are, in fact, just to maintain existing service levels. Safe drinking water systems, we're making sure that we're funding enough to support those. We are supporting the vulnerable and unhoused populations in our community. We are investing more in traffic calming and road safety. We are investing more in our asset management plan to narrow that gap. We are looking at changes to our curbside waste collection in response to the provincial changes in regulation in terms of how recycling is delivered. And we are investing in Indigenous consultation plan and updating the Safe and Well Oxford plan, as that's a requirement of the government. In terms of the challenges we're facing in 2025, growth has reached the top of our list for 2025, and you'll see that as a reoccurring theme throughout the budget package this year for 2025. WSIB costs, we've seen those increasing since COVID, and again, in response to the increased service requirements of predominantly our human health-related services, so Whittingford Lodge and paramedic services. So we're looking at ways of mitigating those costs for 2025 and going forward. We're also prone to ongoing social assistance modernization rollout. That was a government initiative that began in 2024 and will continue in 2025. That's where the regionally we don't support social services to the extent that we did before. There's a certain amount of work that's done regionally, and within our region, that would be the City of London. Shifting fiscal accountability. So this is an interesting one. This is one that we've been lobbying for quite some time now. This is the inadequate funding that we're recognizing from the upper levels of government, that we, being the government that's the closest to the taxpayer, feel obligated to support in these very dire needs. So we've been advocating. We know that AMO's been advocating. I understand that there's been a recent tabling of a request at the legislature to take a look at this. So hopefully, we'll see some movement on this, if not in the near future, hopefully starting in 2026 or 2025, we'll see some degree of paying attention to this concern. And then also long-term care, we're still working through legislative changes that are impacting our level of service, trying to get up to that 4 hours a day per resident care funding envelope, and make sure we're keeping compliant with the legislation. So overall, what you've heard is a 2.6% base increase in the 2025 budget, a 12.5% overall levy increase, and that, in fact, translates into a $137 increase per average residential household. So that's just a little over $11 a month, then, for planning purposes per household. So looking at new information, since the budget package was delivered to you on November the 13th, we've received one notice of motion to date that is illustrated here on this slide, and it's also on the face of our agenda today, so you can read it there as well. But you can see the impact, and this is reflective of a motion that was passed by council at their November 13th meeting to instruct staff to take the necessary steps to amend the development charges, background study, and bylaw to remove the industrial development exemptions. And then also at council's November 13th meetings in closed session, council gave direction with regard to human resources report that we've incorporated the budget impact for in this chart. And similarly, same closed session, council received a report from Woodingford Lodge that then reflects the changes in our budget with that respect. So taking a look at the next slide, then you can see we have received 2 of the 4 Conservation Authority budgets, draft budgets for 2025. And the provisions that we had in our budgets were based on 3% increase year over year. And so these ones have been reflected accordingly to adjust for that, whatever change it is from that 3% provision. So overall, the levy increase is sitting at $7.4 million, or 8.9% increase with those adjustments made. So getting into capital plan highlights, we're just going to go through, again, the highlights through this part of the presentation. The capital budget in detail starts on page 37, and it covers many pages. So I encourage you to look at it in detail. The capital projects will also be addressed as we deliver each one of our respective department and divisional budgets as well. So again, not going to go through detail here. However, breaking down that $131 million in capital plan for 2025, it's predominantly road network and storm sewers and water and wastewater. That makes up about $100 million on its own. $7.4 million for studies and capital, just general capital rather. $9 million for fleet, equipment, and furnishings, and about $12 million for facilities. The next slide then demonstrates how we plan to fund that $131 million. So you can see $1.4 million from taxation, $5.2 from debt or debentures, just over $600,000 from other sources. So again, mentioning earlier, other sources could be from developers or benefiting properties, things such as that. Water, wastewater rates and reserves, $46.2 million. Other reserves, other capital-related reserves, $38.3 million. Development charges, $23.4 million. And grants from the upper levels of government, both Canada and Ontario, just shy of $16 million this year, contributing to our capital plan. So overall, it is a 26.4% increase over the 2024 capital plan. So this next slide then illustrates how we're funding that capital plan. So we start with the operating fund. We're transferring $79.2 million from there to the reserves and reserve fund. And that $79.2 million is comprised of $22.6 million from the general levy, $40,000 from the library levy, $17 million from the water and wastewater rates, interest revenue from just under $6 million, development charge exemptions of $5.6 million, plus those grants from the province and the feds, about $9.1 million collectively, and development charge revenues of $18.6 million. So based on that, then we're able to transfer $123.8 million into the capital fund to fund those costs of $131 million. And then we're taking an additional $7.2 million from the operating fund to fully fund that capital plan. And again, this is illustrated on page 22 of your binder. In terms of funding our asset management plan, the 2024 investment level was $55 million. And we are proposing to increase that by $3.2 million. The total required investment for Oxford County is $75.7 million. Our 2025 budget investment is $58.2 million. So again, a surplus, or rather a deficit of annual funding of $17.6 million. However, we are making some improvements as we've looking to close that gap. Again, details on each one of these starts on page 33. So in terms of capital projects, growth-related projects that were identified subsequent to the development charge background study being adopted include signalization at County Road 20 and Cranberry Line in Tillsonburg, signalization on County Road 9 and 10, or that's the intersection, those two county roads in Ingersoll, and signalization at County Road 2 and George Street in Thamesford. Also notable in our capital plan for 2025 are early procurement projects for fleet delivery times that are now delayed in excess of 12 months. So we'll be ordering 2 ambulances, 2 tandem axle trucks, and 2 tractor mowers. In terms of significant projects to support growth needs, it's predominantly putting pressure on our water and wastewater servicing costs. So we've got the Northeast Industrial Park in Woodstock, Cranberry Road in Tillsonburg, and the Southwest Industrial Park in Ingersoll. A Lansdowne Sewer Extension is also planned for 2025 in Woodstock. In terms of wastewater treatment plant upgrades, we're looking at Norwich, a Class EA study for capacity and expanding of the lagoon there. Tavistock, we're looking at a Class EA completion and initiate the design. Chelmsford, we're looking at upgrades for treatment process enhancements. In Drumbo, we're doing a Class EA completion and commencing capacity expansion in Phase 2. And then Mount Elgin, construction of Phase 3 and 4 of a capacity expansion there. So an overview of our asset management plan. It was last updated in July of 2024. It will again be updated in July of 2025 and to remain compliant with the Ontario regulation. The 2025 upgrade or update needs to reflect within the strategic framework the service level requirements for each of those asset classes. So we'll be working through that process in 2025. And yeah, making sure that our investments are capable of achieving our long-term sustainable plan to support the overall strategic plan. Again, more information on our asset management plan begins on page 31, and it does cover a number of pages in the binder. And this page we've already gone over previously, so I won't go through that one again. And that concludes the overall highlight of the business plan and budget. Now we'll start into the business plan and budget by department, starting off with Public Works. I don't know if we want to pause for any questions or...
Any questions from council before we go on? Deputy Warden Peterson.
Yeah, just a quick one. I just want to make sure I'm doing my math right here. So with the projected, with the growth we had this year, the levy increase is 10.1%, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and then if we happen to do that, so if we happen to do the stuff that have already put in with the DC, Woodingford, Grand River, on and on, that drops it to 8.9. So if we take, just trying to do my math here, so if we take if we take the 2.5 off of there, we're actually sitting, if we do all those things, at 6.4%?
Through the warden to Deputy Warden Peterson. And in fact, that 10.1% is the increase on the tax bill. It's not the levy increase.
Okay.
So if you go back to the chart, and I don't know, Jen, if you can take him back to that chart that shows the subsequent changes that we're looking at that have not yet been made, then you can see the change in levy there. Now, in terms of how that levy translates into tax rate impact and the tax impact on the average household is a little more complicated to calculate. So we have not done that calculation yet, and we will not do that again until we're entirely through the process.
Okay. But it would be less than that, it would be less than that 8.9 if we did the...
8.9% increase in the levy will be less if there's,
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else before we go on? Turn it back over to you, Director Bugner.
Thank you. I will begin starting the public work budget, and then I'll be passing it over to Frank and Don for their portions of the budget as well. So as we start looking at the public works budget for 2025, you will see that our mandate is to provide responsible delivery of high quality, efficient, and safe public infrastructure and customer-focused services that support community, environmental, and economic stability. So our activities that we have included in the budget are in line with the county's strategic plan, and we, as you can see on the bottom of this slide, begin on page 85 of the budget book. So we are proposing an overall budget of approximately $238 million, which is broken down between $116 million of tax-supported services and approximately $122 million of water and wastewater rate-supported services. As mentioned earlier with the capital budget, the public works portion of the capital budget is $120 million, which is that significant increase over 2024. The main part of this increase is the increased number in water and wastewater capital projects that the county, along with our municipal partners, are expected to deliver in 2025. And this is additional investment in infrastructure as well as infrastructure that is needed for developmental growth. Go to the next slide. Perfect. So starting looking at the Public Works Administration budget. So this budget is through an intra-departmental recovery within the other divisions of Public Works. So you'll see a very small increase in the revenue and expenses for 2025. This is related to slightly increase anticipated in salaries for cost of living adjustment, as well as an increase in the telecommunications for our after-hours answering service. And this budget is tax neutral or net neutral on the budget because it goes into the other divisions within Public Works. Go to the next slide. Perfect. So, oh, my computer. So now we're going to begin with the facilities and energy portion. So for 2025, we have 4 budget goals to support the strategic plan. The first 3 are the implementations of our Renewable Energy Action Plan, our Energy Management Plan, and the Forestry Management Plan. And then the 4th one, which Lynn mentioned earlier, is the Thornton Wellfield project that we are proposing to do. So that Thornton Wellfield project is also, as you could see earlier, is on page 105 of the budget book. So this is a project that we are hoping to initiate on the lands adjacent to the Thornton Water Treatment Facility. The county owns approximately 380 acres of land. Of that land, 80 acres is incredibly designated as a sensitive area, and thus greatly restricts the farming operations that can happen on this land, and thus has greatly impacted the amount that we are able to get as a lease revenue. So because of the ongoing nitrate concerns in the area, we are now proposing to remove these 80 acres from farming and phase it into a naturalization project over the next 4 years. So we will, as we start the project over the next 4 years, we will include installing pollinator habitats, meadows, tall grass prairies, and also tree plantings that will improve the canopy's cover in the area. So as we do this with best practices, we are also proposing under the phase 2 of this, so this will be in 2026, to plant the hybrid poplar biomass tree. And so what that will do is when those trees reach maturity, we will be able to use those wood chips to support the strict drain bioreactor that we installed this year. So we will have an on-site source for those wood chips and continue to rejuvenate our forest moving forward. Through this project, our Woodlands Conservation Officer has been talking to many different partners he has in the industry, and we are anticipating grant funding of approximately $123,000 to offset any of the tall grass or tree plantings in the area. So it will be very low cost to the county to install all this information, or all these infrastructure, sorry. Also on the site, we are proposing a 500 kilowatt solar photovoltaic system, and that will cover approximately 2.5 acres of the property. So it is projected to produce 920 megawatt hours of annual electricity input, which will offset the entire Thornton Water Treatment Facility. It's estimated to save approximately $130,000 annually and have a 15-year payback on the initial investment. So this project supports the water protection, biodiversity, and the renewable energy expansion, and has significant environmental benefits for the county. As we continue to look down on the next few bullet points, so the facilities division manages over 320 buildings, and we handle over 10,000 work orders each year. These work orders are split between in-house staff as well as contracted work through our roster contractors. So while we oversee both routine and reactive maintenance, we support many divisions and departments within the county, including library paramedics and public works, as well as the 636 housing units. Approximately 600 work orders every year required a skilled maintenance worker to perform unskilled labor. These could be handing out notices for entry, these could be providing access for contractors to units or areas, and these amount to approximately 900 hours. As well, we've had an increase in staff safety concerns that have been continuing to grow in recent years. And so we have now approximately 500 work orders every year where we actually have to send 2 staff members to these units or sites, and that is because of some of the conditions, the hazardous conditions in those locations, as well as confrontational interactions that they are experiencing. So between these 2 categories, we're up to very close to 2,000 hours a year of a skilled maintenance worker doing unskilled labor. So to support this in 2025, we are proposing to do a trial with a temporary facilities driver so that we can take this unskilled labor and move it to more of an unskilled position. And this would be someone who can drive around, can pick up materials, can open doors, can hand out the notices and things like that, and allow our skilled maintenance workers to do more skilled tasks. We are also anticipating that this will actually reduce the cost of some of those repairs because we will no longer be having to send a contractor out. We'll be able to send our own staff member out, and that has continual benefits. Some people in certain sites, whether it's public works or paramedics, they're sometimes happier to see a county employee. They can ask them a couple more things, find out a little bit what's going on, versus a contractor is only there to fix the one item and isn't aware of the other items. So additional information on this FTE request, or the temporary FTE request, is on page 102 of the budget book. And as Lynn mentioned, so we are proposing increases in the asset management plan. The facilities increase that is proposed for 2025 is $300,000, and you can see that in that final bullet there. As we move to looking at the revenue expense area of the slide, you will see that we are proposing an increase in revenues in 2025. This is due to the funding we anticipate to support the Thornton Wellfield project, additional solar systems coming online that we were constructing in 2024, and as well as our annual rent increases on our lease agreements with different properties that we own. Looking at the expense, you can see that is also increasing for 2025, and these are related to, it does have that temporary FTE request of 0.8 in it. It also has an increase in property taxes of approximately $120,000, and an increase in our computer software and support line, and that is to update the building access software to all county facilities, work on our work order system, as well as some adding those additional sites to our solar monitoring system. So another couple items that are going up in 2025 of note are we are proposing a 2% increase on our electricity costs on top of 2024 actual amounts. And then in 2025, we are going out for 3 new service contracts. Those are our janitorial, our snow removal, and our gas cutting contracts / landscaping for all county properties. And so we have estimated in consultation with the finance division that we are going to assume a 2% increase on top of CPI for all of these new contracts, and that has been included in the base budget for 2025. And so as a result, when you look at the changes from 2024, we are actually proposing a net levy decrease of 3.5% for the facilities and energy portion of the division.
Councillor Mayberry.
Thank you, Warden. Melissa, kind of backing up just a little bit to the Thornton Waterfield or Wellfield work. Understand the intent of trying to get the nitrogen or the nitrates out. Significant cost to it, right? And I'm in support of it. I'm just, but we know what the cost is. What is the cost if we don't do it?
So the
And that may
significant.
not be your area of expertise. I'm just
Right,
curious.
so when you're saying significance of the total project, or?
No, if we said, no, just let all the nitrates go into the swamp.
Right,
At some point, we got to take the nitrates out of the water.
yes.
I assume the people of Woodstock and Swayburg don't actually want to drink the highly nitrated water.
That's correct.
So we're proposing a couple $1 million to try and fix a problem. What's the cost of not doing, what would it cost us to do it some other way?
So majority of the cost actually listed on the new initiative for the Thornton project is related to the solar. It's not actually related to the naturalization portion of it. So we aren't anticipating, I think it's only like $100,000 or $200,000. I'd have to double check the numbers here for the naturalization portion of it. So yeah.
If I can. So we naturalize an area, a couple $100,000, we lose $8,000 or whatever for land rent. All well and good. What if we didn't do anything, just left everything the way it is? We did get an increase in nitrates in the water in the swamp there that we're going to pull out, and then we're going to try and pull the nitrates out of that water. And that's what I wonder is, what is the cost of Because in fact, this couple $1 million might be the cheapest money we spend this year to protect the health of the people
Yeah,
that are drinking that water. But there is a way of getting those nitrates out of the water that is post, when we pump it out of the ground.
Yeah, I think I would probably need to ask Don if he was able to confirm what he thinks the cost of adding more nitrate removal at the Thornton well field
That's what I
is. Do you
assumed.
have an estimated cost on what that would be?
Thank you, Frank. Yes, it's a good question, and through the warden to council. To begin with, I think the bioreactor that's there is going to look after the nitrate reduction from the changes to the drain. The farming practice adds nutrients to the farm, so I think what's been done there as a way to prevent the nitrates getting to the drinking water source is to work with an agronomist or source water protection staff, facilities, and to come up with a plan for the farmers so that the crops that are put on there do not require as much nitrogen. That's the source of the nitrate. So that's how we've been trying to protect it. Now, by naturalizing it, we're going to get an extra benefit from that because we won't be putting nutrients on, and also, these plants and things are designed to have another purpose, such as the wood chips for the bioreactor. So that's all good. In terms of the nitrates, I don't suspect that the water nitrates will go up or be elevated going into the swamp, so to speak. But there is no easy way to remove nitrates. There is ways of doing it, but it's very expensive. So we want to be preventative, proactive, protect that whole area like an issue contributing area, even beyond the drain site. That's what we're going through the Source Water Protection Act to do, even beyond the properties we own, and then protect the property we own from having too many nutrients on it, such as the bioreactor or farming practices. So we're doing everything we can to prevent the nitrate from contaminating that source of water for the customers in Woodstock and Sweetburg and others who use it. It would be a multi-million-dollar process to install reverse osmosis or some other technique for nitrate removal, which I'm not really familiar with exact details because we're not considering it. It's best to prevent it as opposed to try to treat it.
So I guess that's what I'm getting at. An ounce of prevention might be worth a pound of cure, but we have run into times when we spent a pound on the prevention to get an ounce of cure. And I just want to make sure, if nitrate is relatively easy to get out of the water, then maybe we shouldn't be worried about it. And I suspect it isn't.
It's correct. It's not easy.
Okay, I'll move on to the next, looking at the capital for facilities and energy. So these are some of the capital projects that are noted for 2025. We are going to just start the next iteration of the building condition assessments. We are dealing with some projects out of the current building condition assessments. We have some various green and renewable energy projects, and this includes some work we are doing at 70 Maria and 82 Finkel Street, which council approved earlier this year, that is in conjunction with some funding that we are receiving from CMHC. And then the last is the space optimization project here at OCAB, and that is to densify the cubicle areas within the building. And in conjunction with that, there is also in the building, there's also replacing the carpet in all cubicle areas. So it kind of will be a refresh of those areas to allow for current staff to have a bit more space. We currently have some staff that are sharing desks or don't have a dedicated desk when they come to the office. And this will allow also for some growth within the building over the next few years, hopefully up to a decade, but it will depend on how our growth continues. So looking, as we look down at the table here, so this is where you can see where all the different projects are funded from, and we are proposing 0 on taxation for 2025. As we move on to fleet, our budget goal for fleet is to continue the implementation of the Green Fleet Plan, which is a 2021 to 2025 document. So we will be also starting the next iteration of that plan to be presented to council on where we see the fleet potentially changing in the next 5 years. And we look at the asset management contribution, so this is also proposing to have a $300,000 increase in 2025, and this is excluding the paramedic service potential increase that would be shown later in that budget. Looking at the revenues and expenses for the fleet budget, you will see that there's a decrease in the revenue, and this is due to what vehicles we anticipate to be replaced and the value for those vehicles in 2025. This fluctuates every year. On the expense side, we are seeing an anticipated decrease in the repair and maintenance amount for the fleet of approximately $90,000. We have had quite a backlog the last few years of vehicles we had purchased that were delayed in being delivered. We now officially have all those vehicles, so we have in some ways a newer fleet, so we're not anticipating those same repair and maintenance items. Additionally, we are looking at a fuel savings of approximately $138,000. This is when we prepared the budget for 2024, we kind of have to assume what we think gas prices may or may not do in the year, and also the gas tax on fuel was extended longer, that it was removed by the provincial government, so that results in some of the savings, as well as there's some savings regarding the electric vehicles instead of the gasoline vehicles, because we do now have all of them delivered for in 2024. And so overall, we are expecting a 15% decrease in our operating and capital budgets for 2025. When we look at the capital budget, a full breakdown of the vehicles are actually on page 101 of the budget book, where you can see all the vehicles listed. There are a couple of vehicles that we actually procured this year in 2024 that had longer than 12 months, delivery, so they will be received next year. We have the list of vehicles that we're looking at replacing in 2025, and then as Lynn mentioned earlier, we have a few vehicles that we're looking at procuring in 2025 for 2026 delivery. And so I just want to remind council, every year when we get into looking at what vehicles that we will be bringing forward as part of the budget, our fleet coordinator actually does a complete analysis on every vehicle within our fleet. They look at 4 items. That's the age of the vehicle, the distance traveled or hours of operation, depending on if it's a piece of equipment, the repair and maintenance costs that we've been experiencing, and the reliability of those vehicles. It's through those 4 items that we then get the asset condition, and only those that are in poor or critical are automatically put into the budget for replacement. Anything that is got a fair condition, he does a further assessment on, and then determines if that can be pushed one more year or if there's something else that we should be looking at to replace it in year. And we are generally seeing between 5 and 10-year replacement on all of our light-duty vehicles, about a 10-year on our heavy-duty vehicles, which would typically include this tandem snowplows, and then 20+ on our heavier equipment, which would be a compactor, a grader, the tractor mowers, and things like that. So just a reminder to council on those.
Councillor May.
So I guess 2 quick questions. The first one is, and I had this complaint from a resident a couple weeks ago about the fact that we seem to drive an awful lot of pickup trucks for, and I wouldn't call it personal vehicles, but we're just traveling around. And the pickup trucks are more expensive to buy and more expensive to operate than cars. Should we be looking at the necessity for each vehicle? So I guess the question, Melissa, would be, do we actually do do we actually need a truck for that job, or because there's another vehicle? That's question 1.
Through the word to Councillor Mayberry. So every year, once we determined a current vehicle needs to be replaced, whatever it is, the fleet coordinator works with that division or department to determine what is the actual vehicle being used for. Is it transporting people? Is it transporting things? And determine what is the replacement vehicle. It is not a guarantee. If it's a pickup now, it will be a pickup next time. So we do look at that every single time before we put forward a replacement vehicle.
Okay. I think the person that contacted me about it said the pickup truck is picking up water samples, which could be just as easily picked up by a car. I'm not saying that that's accurate. I'm just saying that was the comment. So the second one would be around the road grader. $700,000, probably a reasonable price for a road grader. But in talking to Frank, we have 2, and they get 350 hours a year. a road grader should be running at least 1,000 hours a year. I'm not sure, like, we either should be looking for a used road grader, or I had suggested maybe we should be looking to see if there's some way of sharing them between municipalities to cut down, because if we're spending $700,000 to use a grader a third of the amount of time it should be used in a year, it seems awfully expensive to me.
Was that a question, or do you want to try and attempt to rephrase that?
So
as a
I'm just
question?
wondering, are we buying, how are we justifying $700,000 for a new grader that's not being used to the capacity it should be? Or, sorry.
Through the warden, maybe Frank, would you like to comment on the impact on transportation operations?
Thank you. Through the warden. Yeah, I believe did discuss it with staff, and I think the issue is it is the usage is spread out through the year. It isn't just a specific time of year, so that's where if it was a more specific period where it's used, rental would maybe be a better option. But the thought was that because it is needed throughout the year, not the winter so much, that owning one is a more cost-effective option.
I think this is a subject that probably would be helpful if we had a conversation. I don't mean we as council, but if staff had a conversation at service sharing to see if there is a way. In the rural municipalities, there's 10 or a dozen graders all over the county. All of them are not being used all of the time, and I think would be available. I think this is an exercise where working stronger together might be a good idea. Thank you, Warden.
Councillor Petrie, then Councillor Schaefer.
Just want to go back to the comments where staff do look at different needs of different vehicles and the usage for them. And then I think that's a positive thing, especially with our Green Fleet program. We do have a locally owned manufactured vehicle that is now going to be available to the public. And so that maybe have some uses to that, and just different vehicles coming online that, I agree, there's different things that traditionally it's easier to take care of one type of vehicle, but if there's different service levels available, then for the different needs, then being more specific. I guess the question is, are staff continuously evaluating those different options that are coming to market to see how they could be used in the different operations of the county?
Through the warden to Councillor Petrie. So every time we look at, once we determine what vehicle we are replacing, whether it's a pickup, a van, a car, anything like that, we do a complete scan of what is available in the market and determine if there is a green fleet option that will support our fleet. Sometimes the range may not be there or different things like that, or the vehicle might be too small to, say, hold the library books. The vehicle might not be big enough, so we do a complete scan every year prior to us putting the vehicle in the budget, so we kind of have an idea for cost, what we might be needing.
Councillor Schaefer.
Thank you, Warden, through you. First, let me start with a shameless plug. We have a grader for sale at EZT. Not the, Anyway, just my question is regarding the green
That was a
fleet.
shameful plug.
We've had data now. We've had green vehicles for a while. How are they evaluated as far as, life expectancy of them? It's easy to look at a nice vehicle and figure out age and mileage and things like that, but how are the electrical vehicles evaluated for that?
Through the warden. So I actually had our fleet coordinator and supervisor prepare a comparison summary for me. So we have had two of our Ford Lightnings for a year now. So we have 1 year of comparison that we are comparing. And we have 2 units, a little bit different drivers, so we can kind of look at that as well. So we look at the purchase price for the electric vehicles. We did receive a rebate, so what that off. We look at the life cycle cost for either if it's fuel or electricity, and then we look at the maintenance cost, and then we also look at what we potentially might get for a sale of the vehicle. So we take that and we kind of decide over the life cycle, and right now we are projecting, depending on the vehicle, of course, between $13,000 and $18,000 savings over the life of that vehicle, having an electric vehicle over a typical combustion engine.
I feel like there somebody else had their hand up that I missed, no? All right, back over to you.
Okay, we will move on to engineering construction. So for 2025, the engineering and construction team is going to continue to work on improving our project management documentation. This is something we've been working on for a few years now. Every year we continue to improve it and make it a little better. We're continuing to work on our development service review with our area municipality partners. And in 2025, in conjunction with community planning, we are looking at revamping the existing countywide water and wastewater capacity protocol, which is for all new residential development. As mentioned earlier, we are experiencing a lot of growth in Oxford, and we have a lot of capital projects. While the dollar value has increased in 2025, the preparation work for that has been going on for a few years. And currently, our 5 project engineers are quite stretched thin and are each managing very much diverse and numerous projects every year. And so to address this capacity, since 2021, we have actually had 2 engineers on secondment for helping us with our project delivery, as well as we have been consulting on different capital projects, third-party inspectors to help us to deal with the capacity challenges that we have had amongst our own staff. So to help address this, because it has been going on for a few years and we are anticipating it to continue, we are proposing for 2025 to add 2 additional project engineers to our staff complement and 1 public works technician. So these can be found on page 113 and 116 in the budget book. So the 2 project engineers will help alleviate the existing team's workload, also reduce internal strain that some of these capital projects have caused, both within other divisions in public works as well. We're looking to improve the quality and continuity of our projects and ultimately lower some of the project costs. Staff can deliver the project management of these cheaper than a consultant can. We also are hoping this will help in some ways meet some budget timelines. Some of the carryover capital that was this year was because unfortunately 2 of our projects we were only able to get to council to award in October, so we weren't really able to spend some of the funds we were anticipating this year, and so we're hoping this will help with that as well. The additional public works technician will continue to provide support on our designs. We want to make sure that the inspectors get involved in those designs early to help ensure that we have a better product being constructed. This will also help having the more specialized inspections being done by county staff for our own records and things like that. And we also want to use this new position to also help us collect. We still have some infrastructure gaps for our asset management plan, and this position will help collecting that information and keeping it up to date to support the asset management plan. So together we are hoping that these 3 positions will help distribute the work order a little bit more evenly amongst current staff, reduce the cost of these capital projects a little bit regarding our staffing, also improve efficiency and support our long-term goals, and foster project continuity and sustainable growth a bit better. So when we look at the revenues and expenses table, most of the changes are related to either the FTEs that we are requesting, as well as we have moved in 2024 a position from engineering services to the information services group. They were kind of assisting with some of the asset management collection in public works, so we've moved that, and that is reflecting in this change as well. So you will see there is the budget variance of 5.7 related to that. And if we look at the next slide for the capital for public works, so not too much public works capital for engineering and construction. So we are looking at buying some radar traffic counters. This will allow us to collect some additional traffic information as we get into more of those shoulder seasons where we can't quite put the kind of the tubes everyone's used to across the roads. We have the new computers for the new staff people and a vehicle for the public works technician. So those are the expenses kind of shows as a very large percentage to taxation, but the amount is very small. And so that ends the engineering services, and I can pass it over to Frank to continue the rest of the presentation.
Any questions on the engineering services before Frank starts on transportation? Councillor Petrie. Okay.
Thank you. Good morning. The budget goals for the transportation services budget include development of county-wide automated speed enforcement program for council's further consideration and potential implementation in 2026. And that's supported in the budget with $75,000 for data collection. That's further detailed in the new initiative report on page 130 of the budget book. Continuation of countywide traffic calming and speed management measures, and for 2025 that includes construction of the horizontal lane shift in Plattsville as a pilot project, and then potential implementation countywide if it's deemed successful. Ongoing implementation of the county's cycling master plan for 2025. That includes paved shoulders on Oxford Road 119 between Ingersoll and Thamesford, and that's part of regular scheduled road resurfacing that's planned for that section of road. Road need study is scheduled in 2025 as part of a 5-year cycle. So last study was completed in 2020, so due again next year. Planning to initiate a annual video inspection program for county-owned storm sewers to establish condition assessment rating that will be used to prioritize capital improvements and further support the asset management plan. And that's supported with $45,000 in the budget and further detailed in a new initiative report on page 131 of the budget package. The budget includes contributions to reserve funds, $10.3 million for roads and stormwater, which is an increase of approximately $700,000 over 2024, and $2.6 million for bridges and structural culverts, which is status quo from 2024. The transportation, operational, and capital expenses total approximately $67 million, which is offset by approximately $40 million in revenue, which is funded from various revenue streams. That includes federal and provincial grants, reserve transfers, development charges, and capital contributions from municipal partners. That leaves a net levy of approximately $26.5 million and represents a 6.1% increase over the 2024 budget. And that includes approximately $1.1 million in the net operating budget and approximately $450,000 net capital costs over the compared to the 2024 budget. Next slide, please. Capital budget includes approximately $40 million worth of projects in 2025 for road, storm sewer, bridges, and structural culverts, as well as approximately $500,000 in minor capital projects. Most of that is largely funded from the various funding streams, leaving a net capital levy of approximately $450,000. Moving on to the waste management budget, the 2025 budget goals.
Councillor Mayberry.
Sorry.
Just, thanks, Frank. Just on the I think it's CCTV inspection. I take this is $45,000 a year, will be $45,000 a year ongoing, right? To get over all of the storm sewers sewers and storm water systems, all that. At what point would we be further ahead, rather than contracting it out, to do it all over, like do it on our own, have our own camera, and I know up front it's a little more expensive to do it that way. I'm just wondering, and I have no idea how how much time this takes. Is this somebody a week of time, or is this, you know, a full-time person? Obviously, it's not for 45,000, so I'm just curious, should this be something that we look at? Because when you think of all of the storm sewers and that sort of stuff, plus all of the regular sewers that we have, and 45,000 every year, I'm just wondering, are we anywhere close, or does it absolutely no, just leave it alone? So, thank you.
Thank you, through the warden. Yeah, that's correct. It would be an ongoing annual program. I don't know that it would justify full-time staff and purchasing equipment to do it in-house. I don't know that there's enough work for it to be continuous all year. It will be combined with sanitary sewer inspection that's currently completed, so it will be joint undertaking with the water wastewater department, as well as with area municipalities that are also doing that on their own infrastructure.
So that's what I wondered, if this was for the roads, for storm sewers, and then we add what needed to be done for sanitary sewers, does the pot become big enough that it does, in fact? That was my question, really. Does it become a full-timer, or we're still only at half-time, leave it alone? That was sort of where I was going with it. Sorry. Thank you.
Councillor Petrie?
Thank you. Through you, Warden, my question is around the stormwater initiative. Does the county have a stormwater master plan? Understanding, I'm just looking at the website, there's 17,000 catch basins on how we try to go. And then most of those would probably be in an urban area. Is there an opportunity, or does the county already work with the local municipalities to try to cost share on these initiatives as well? Because I think obviously everybody's trying to do this asset management as well. Is there an opportunity, just going around Councillor Mayberry's line of thinking of always trying to work together and save money? Is there an opportunity, or has that been explored on how we can work with local municipalities to offset the need for county services and local municipality services in this area?
Thank you, through the warden. Yeah, definitely we'll consider joint procurement with either the water wastewater department within the county or with area municipalities too. And I think that has been done previously with sanitary sewer inspection, where both municipalities have, as you said, the same need.
Okay. And just to follow up on the stormwater master plan, is that something the county?
Right.
Currently?
Sorry. Yeah, we don't have currently have a stormwater master plan.
Okay. Is that on a time frame in a thought in the ongoing near future, I guess in the planning horizon? Is that on to be looked at?
Thank you, through the warden. Yeah, there is actually money in the 2024 budget that will carry over into 2025 to develop a stormwater operation and maintenance plan. And it is a regulatory requirement, so it is to a certain degree somewhat of a master plan as well.
All right. Thank you very much.
Moving on to waste management, the 2025 budget goals for waste management include transition of the municipal blue box program to producer responsibility, and that will involve largely communicating the changes to residents and customers, and working with the producers to inform residents of that program that will begin January 1st, 2026. We'll also currently working on, and will continue to work on, changes to the curbside collection services that include the changes to the municipal blue box program, as well as contract renewal for collection services that we expect to include an organics program to a certain degree, pending council's approval. In 2025, we'll be looking at further expansion of the landfill gas collection and flaring system, and that will involve expansion of the well field, as well as replacement of some of the existing equipment and instrumentation that's reached the end of its useful life there. We'll also be continuing work on the south fill area expansion, and in 2025 that will involve updates to the design and operations plan that was originally submitted when the landfill site was first opened. So that's required to get ministry approvals to advance into the Southville area, and we expect that that will be needed for waste disposal by 2028. We've included a FTE change for a waste management technician, and that's a conversion of a current contract position to a permanent full-time position, and that is further detailed in the FTE request report on page 143 of your budget book. Ongoing programs, changes to the curbside collection program, implementation of a potential organics program, changes to the Blue Box program, a potential development of a recycling collection program for sources that will no longer be eligible under the provincial program, and then ongoing project support. We feel that that position is justified to convert to a full-time position. Capital reserve contributions for the waste management reserve is approximately $400,000, which is an increase of $20,000 over the 2024 budget. Overall, operating expenses, as well as capital for waste management, are approximately $21 million, and that's offset by approximately $16.5 million. That leaves a net levy of approximately $4.3 million and represents a 11% increase over the 2024 budget. Next slide, please. Capital projects for waste management include the purchase of the front-end loader that was procured early in 2024 this year. So that'll be received in 2025. $55,000 for the landfill Southville expansion project that I mentioned. We'll be looking at a replacement of the existing weigh scale. Approximately $1 million for the expansion of the gas collection system that I mentioned, and then approximately $300 for other capital projects. Total capital budget is approximately $3 million. That will be largely funded from reserves.
Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, thank you, Warden. Question, Frank. Are there not two scales at Salford?
Through the warden, yes, that's correct. There was a second scale was added approximately 2 years ago, so this is replacement of the original scale.
Councillor Mayberry.
Just a little curious on the gas collection. So is this an expansion into what I might call the south end of the landfill? And the idea that eventually we're going to get organics out, theoretically there would be less gas to collect? It's
Through the
a lot of
warden,
money.
this is actually an expansion within the existing north fill area. So as areas have filled, we need to start drawing the gas out of that area to prevent it from escaping to the atmosphere. Thank you, and I'll pass it on to Don.
I think before we start wastewater, I'm going to suggest we take a 10-minute break and then come back. So 11:08, we're back from break. Apologize for that, a little bit longer than we thought. Hopefully everybody enjoyed that and is fresh and ready to go. And we'll start with wastewater. Over to Don.
Thank you very much. Through the Warden of Council. Yes, I will address the wastewater services. On this slide here, we can see the 2025 budget goals. The sanitary sewer I&I program is a multi-year implementation project to inspect the sanitary sewer condition, identify the asset repair and replacement needs, and reduce the rain-derived stormwater inflow and the groundwater infiltration into the wastewater collection system, regaining much-needed capacity and reducing operational costs. The wastewater system modeling development, Oxford County is continuing with our wastewater systems hydraulic models to assist in planning for capacity improvements, expansions for the system. According to our Consolidated Linear Infrastructure, ECA, we need to have the urban centers with a model by 2029. That's for the ECA for all the sanitary collection systems. Our county's preferred modeling software, which we have, is PC Swim. The SCADA master plan implementation in wastewater is a multiple project rollout in wastewater for 2025 in the budget. The Woodstock wastewater treatment plant design and the intercept collection design for that, and construction of the SCADA. Next item was the Tavistock wastewater treatment plant expansion and upgrade. This is in the EA phase and will move to design in 2025. This is for the lagoon. That's to provide for the development, both residential and non-residential. Further to this, we then have new initiatives. The Tillsonburg sanitary, the Tillsonburg sanitary derouting. This was identified by the town staff in collaboration with the county staff as needed in the sanitary sewers, trunks, and sub-trunks, and it is to follow the CCTV and flushing program where it's needed. This is a contracted service, and these areas can then be further identified as candidates for lining in the upcoming linear program. That new initiative can be found in the budget book on page 185. Following that is the new initiative for the electronic logbooks. That's on the budget book on page 187. Water and wastewater electronic logbooks for both water and wastewater are endorsed by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, and during a wastewater audit was actually recommended. It'll benefit the county through yearly staff time savings and reduce costs for the physical logbooks. Additionally, they provide an easily searchable database for troubleshooting and ongoing investigation of root causes. They also add in the clarity of the log and also ensure that all entries are sequential in the logbooks when they're electronic. After that new initiative, we're looking at wastewater services having an 8.7 million wastewater reserve collected from rates. That's an increase of $2 million over 2024. There is no impact on the levy. A couple of items that in operating budget, which starts on page 167 of the budget book to 178 for wastewater. If looking at that, a couple of pressures on the budget is on chemicals. There's 2 new sewage pumping stations. There's an increase in costs in the ferrous chloride for phosphorus removal. So there's some increases and pressures on chemicals. There's also some increased costs in testing related to PFAS testing of biosolids to form a baseline as there's regulatory changes coming that will require us to meet limits on PFAS. Next slide, please. So now wastewater services capital, we're looking in 2025 at $39,155,450 funded from reserves, of over $26 million, debt of $2.4 plus million, recovery of $50,000, and DC funds of $10,372,000. The new projects that's listed here, Northeast Industrial Park is a project that's led by the City of Woodstock in collaboration with county staff and with the AECOM consultants. They have broken that project out into 4 contracts. The 2025 budget amount here of $6,036,000 is from Contract 2, is to design and construction of the external sanitary force main from the development underneath the 401, across an easement on Toyota, and down Dundas Street to 100 meters east of Woodall Way. The next project listed here at $2,499,000 are replacement projects. This is the linear infrastructure underneath the roads in the town of Tillsonburg. This would include several road-related coordinated projects on Woodcock and Pheasant and John Pound Road. It also would include the Cranberry Trunk extension for development. The $6,806,000 for expansion into the Southwest Industrial Park in Ingersoll refers to a 700 millimeter trunk sewer coming down King Street, going south through a new residential development, and then further south down Wallace line to the midpoint to connect to a new industrial, commercial, institutional development there that is on Wallace line. So that's all development related. And then there's $5,200,000 in the Thamesford wastewater treatment plant for process enhancements. Those enhancements are a screening building that has no screening on the system, and a retrofit of the plug flow aeration system, again for managing the growth in Thamesford. Also of note in your projects in your budget book on page 155, you'll see the Drumbo wastewater treatment plant with additional 2 cartridges, $160,000 to move their capacity from 450 cubic meters a day to 660 cubic meters a day. You'll see Mount Elgin expansion at $1.8 million to increase its capacity. And next year, it'll go out to construction 190 cubic meters a day to 381. You're going to see the William Street sewage pumping station in Tavistock move into design. We're looking for that to increase capacity from 86 liters per second to 124. It's followed by a major construction project. We're looking at the Norwich Lagoon system EA for completion in 2025. That system would be moving from, I believe it's 1,500 to 2,600 cubic meters a day. We're also seeing in Woodstock in the budget book on page 158, the sanitary sewers. There's a large sewer upgrade on Pattullo to service the Pattullo Industrial Park. It's part of a Southeast Servicing Plan developed by AECOM. It's $2 million plus. There's also in the budget book further out several upgrades to the Southeast Trunk that's required. We'll be doing CCT flow monitoring, but that goes all the way out to 2028 for improvements in order to handle the capacity from the development. And in Plattsville, it should be noted there's about $1.4 million in total for biosolids cleanout, berm repair, and a new filter in the Plattsville Lagoon system. I believe we would move to the next slide, please. All right. And this is the water services. So with the water, the SCADA master plan rollout for water after the pilot projects include the Mount Elgin design and construction, the Oxford South Water design and construction, the Drumbo Princeton design and construction, and the Brownsville. So several projects are underway there. In addition, the main water feeder main to Woodstock from the Thornton and Tabor well fields was assessed at the 401 crossing, and It was determined to do a liner there to extend its useful life, so that too is in the 2025 budget. Also in the budget is an FT request for a SCADA technician. It was identified in the approved 2019 SCADA master plan to be needed directly after the pilots for this additional technician will ensure the effective delivery of the new projects to maintain the existing SCADA network. That is shared 50-50 water, wastewater. There is no fleet implication to this because we've decided in the department we can share the SCADA vehicle amongst the two technicians between office work and field work. This can be found on page 179 of the budget book. Additionally, the next request is for a student for technical services who will assist the technical services team and decrease their workload by helping them review CCTV and other work with the QMS coordinator, freeing the staff to work on priority projects such as the modeling of the PC swim or developing our wastewater QMS system, which we are working as a best practice. It can be found on page 181 of the budget book. It also helps provide a new young professional with experience in the water area and hopefully develops an interest in a career in water and wastewater. Following that, we have new initiatives. The Tillsonburg Swabbing Initiative was triggered by a water quality management system opportunity for improvement. It was identified during a risk assessment that focused on customer complaints. The swabbing removes the natural buildup of scale and sediment, and swabbing is currently used throughout the county in areas where it's needed. Tillsonburg currently uses directional flushing, but that uses a lot more water, and so this new initiative can be found in the budget book on page 185. Now, the other new initiative is for water, is also for electronic logbooks. It's already described for the wastewater operators. It serves the same purpose. So the capital reserve contribution from the water side is $8.3 million, and that's up $1 million from the previous year, and there is no impact to levy. I should indicate other pressures on the budget, starting on page 163 through 166, the operating budget would be on telecommunications. We're replacing all the IR 1101s routers, 35 of them. They're obsolete with new routers. In testing, there'll be pressures to increase as we do a 3-year sampling of all the raw water. In addition, we're adding a well 3 in Tillsonburg, so there'll be some pressures there. Additionally, there's under 5310 consulting fees, there's money set aside to participate with the City of Woodstock in a new servicing study for the realignment on Patulo for servicing that property. Next slide, please. Water services new projects. Well, before we go there, I suppose I should mention that the 2025 budget total capital is $29,859,498, funded through reserves by $19,679,521, but also a grant, $1,295,000. That grant was for Tillsonburg Well 7A as a provincial grant under the Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund. It was received for that community. The outcome of this project will enhance the water system, promote growth, and enhance housing. So that's part of the funding of it. Then there was debt funding of $1.4 million plus, and DC of $7,434,000 and change. In terms of the new projects, City of Woodstock projects, these are coordinated between the asset management and the staffs, between the life and condition of the infrastructure and the road needs. So these are all the linear replacement projects under the road that the city carries out on our behalf and we budget for. The water main that's listed there is $3,399,000 for the Northeast Industrial Park. That is part of contract 2 as well. That goes from the water tower, the east water tower, through the same title to easement as the sanitary under the 401 to the new development. Additionally, Town of Tilsonburg, again, that's a road coordinated program for replacement of infrastructure. And then $1,750,000 for the cast iron replacements. This is in Ingersoll. This is on Wanham Street South at a rail crossing, $1.6 million, and then additionally abandoning the Thames River overhead crossing off Wanham Street for $100,000. In addition to those projects, I've listed on page 160 of the budget book, the Tilsonburg Well 6A and Well 11. These are replacement redrilling of the wells. Well 11 is $642,000 and well 6A $150,000. This is to regain capacity for the system. And then in Ingersoll on page 161, well 11, it's been out of use. It had H2S issues. It was offline, but because we have a need for the capacity, we're looking to bring it back online with the required design construction of a treatment facility with a filter so that we can access that full capacity for growth in Ingersoll. And I believe that brings me to conclusion.
Any questions on water and wastewater? One from me. There I'm not sure if this is actually for finance or public works. In the report that that council received last week and forwarded for budget consideration on water and wastewater rates, there were some significant water and wastewater rate increases. And I'm just wondering if you can help me understand, like are there specific projects that are driving those water and wastewater rate increases? Some systems didn't see very large increases, but others were sort of double digits, and I just want to understand which projects are driving that.
Yes, thank you, Warden. As I understand the rate increases, there's two parts to the water bill, and there's a consumption portion and there's a fixed portion. And they forecast the consumption of the water, and there's been less consumption. With the reduction in consumption, it's meaning that we're not maybe hitting our targets for some of the transfer to reserve to meet our needs under the asset management plan. So that means the fixed portion has to be increased to make up that gap. In addition to that pressure, there's the increasing operating costs from the FTE I've requested, the new initiatives I've requested, and reduced interest revenues that has an impact on it. So for those reasons, that's what's driving the fixed portion cost on the rates, if that answers the question.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Councilor Mayberry.
So maybe I haven't been paying attention over the last few years, but I was a little surprised when I got to the Tavistock wastewater expansion. I realized it's only $100,000 for the EA this year, but over the next 7 or 8 years, we're looking at spending another $34 million to expand. First of all, I didn't realize Tavistock had to grow in that much, but second of all, I thought we just spent $5 million cleaning out the lagoon there. It sounds like an awful lot of money for a fairly small community. That was, I don't know, Frank, or Don.
Through the warden to Councillor Mayberry, the money that is in the budget was from the Water and Wastewater Master Plan, and it looked at the target that would need to be there for that community out to 2046, and it considered in terms of a mechanical plant, if it had to be a mechanical plant to meet the assimilative capacity study of the receiver, which is yet to be fully determined. So in my estimation, that's sort of the worst case scenario, but it's conservative. It's likely going to be a project, once we get into design, that's going to still utilize or leverage the lagoon system as well as some other technology, I assume, to get us to the same point. But it'll be somewhere in the double digits in terms of millions of dollars. I appreciate that, but it is what's required for growth in the community, yes.
Any other questions on water and wastewater before we move on? I think next one up is Human Services then, I think. Director Smith.
Thank you, Council. So Human Services is starting on page 192 of your budget book. And again, showing a full budget there, total budget of just under $88 million. And again, the divisions under Human Services include Community Services, which is Ontario Works, and those discretionary benefits, childcare and early on, and of course, housing services, along with homelessness as well. I'll start first with childcare and early on, so that'll pull you to page 200 of your budget book. Some of the main goals, again, facilitating our early on program with the property out at Graham Street. Again, with our CWELC and cost-based funding formula, rolling those kind of the implementation, rolling implementation out. Again, CWELC is that $10 a day childcare that we're trying to get to. And you will see this throughout each of the divisions, the review of the services that we do provide in Human Services, so that will be something that we're pulling through in 2025. And again, implementation of the updated childcare and early years 5-year plan. In terms of the FTE change, you will see an increase here of 0.5 for an integrated programs coordinator. That is an existing temporary position that we are looking to make permanent and make a few changes. So you'll see 0.5 here in childcare as well as 0.5 in the housing portfolio. It is a very valuable position, and we are looking to maybe change it a little bit to mimic what we need in 2025. So in terms of the childcare portion, it will be completely funded through a grant, through CWELC, and that piece will really be helping to assist providers in that new CWELC implementation, including kind of signing people on for those new agreements and really any childcare related programming. And again, if you want more details, that's on page 214 of your budget book. And then again, we are seeing a bit of an increase here, but just to maybe detail the funding that we do receive for the childcare and early on portfolio, really the most of this funding is a flow through. It does come from the federal and provincial governments, with a portion of the admin dollars being 50-50. So you're seeing quite a bit of a budget variance increase there, but that's because of that new cost-based funding formula. So we are kind of to make up for that $10 a day childcare, seeing a bit more of a flow through of that CWELC funding. That's the increase there. And then, of course, just some general increases with the 50-50 matching component and some general increases with our interdepartmentals. And then moving on to capital projects, we do have one capital project there, completely funded through grant, and that'll be $65,000 for meeting technology. And then we'll jump to community services, and this is on page 195 of your budget package. Again, our goals next year, still pushing through with the centralized intake. Of course, that's some changes to our how social services are managed with our office. So we will still be kind of proceeding with those changes into 2025. Again, you'll see the service delivery review carrying forward from childcare as well. We are looking to do a bit of an onboarding toolkit and resource library, really to get we do have a lot of new hires, and really with a lot of the changes that have been happening in programming, we do need a bit more of a concrete kind of training manual for those situations when we do have new employees. And then again, community awareness resource, and this really goes across the department, just kind of more social media presence and really getting everything that the department does out there in the community. And then you'll see there's a community outreach navigator temporary position. This is actually carrying forward. It is an existing position that is completely funded through provincial funding. So you'll just see that it's really just carrying forward into 2025. And then we did drop by 0.3. We did remove that summer student position from that division as well. And again, you will see a bit of an increase there. This funding works very similar. Ontario Works funding under community services works very similar. Most of it does come from the provincial government, but there is a 50-50 matching component for that funding. So there is a bit of an increase there to kind of make up for that 50-50 matching that we received, which did increase a little bit. And then we have a bit of an increase for further discretionary benefits, and those are for individuals that are not on Ontario Works, so just providing those supports to the community. And then into housing and homelessness, which is on page 206 of your budget package. really kind of the main budget goals, still pulling forward and working on those affordable and supportive housing projects. So many of those are still ongoing and looking to do, of course, another project going into 2025. So you will see $1.5 million allocated there for on a future RFP. Again, negotiating those new operating agreements with all of our housing providers, which council did see that report come not too long ago, so we are continuing to work through that. The homelessness response strategy will be a pretty large piece in 2025, seeing what the outcomes are and what we have to implement going forward. And of course, the service delivery review pulling forward, and as well continuing to collaborate with all of our community partners, specifically in that homelessness space. And then again, what I've referenced previously, you will see that 0.5 integrated programs coordinator pulling forward to make that permanent. That 0.5 piece, that position is responsible for kind of the second unit repair program and really any housing related agreement items. So that position will be pulling forward as it has become apparent that that's a very integral piece of that kind of affordable housing part of the division. And then again, some capital considerations there, capital contribution for our social housing units. And then again, you'll see a bit of an increase there as well with that division. There was a bit of salary gapping as we did have that supervisor position that was added mid-year in 2024. So there was a bit of salary gapping to pull forward. Again, with the interdepartmentals being a bit of an increase. And again, the integrated programs coordinator, half of that position is proposed to go on taxation. So you will see a little bit of an increase there with that portfolio. I should say too that there is a bit of the budget variance is a bit of a negative there because we are kind of finishing up a lot of the larger projects that have happened over the last couple of years. So you won't see as many kind of pulling forward that we were holding on to in the budget. In terms of a capital in the housing division, so you'll see the building condition assessment work that needs to take place on the social housing units there for about $2.8 million. We have $1.5 million in here as well to support an ongoing affordable housing project in Tillsonburg. This will kind of goes to the piece of getting that site ready, to which council will see something hopefully come forward later in 2025. And then we do have $70,000 towards affordable housing project implementation. So this will be looking at kind of some of our legal costs and some of those costs associated with getting some of these sites shovel ready. So that's what that piece, yes.
Through you, thank you. I'm curious through the, is there any permanent shelter systems being identified in any of these dollars here in Oxford County?
Through the warden to Councillor Accioni. So through this, there wouldn't be something specific for capital dollars for a shelter. Of course, it's still kind of the operational funding through our provincial funding, HPP. But as of right now, to be clear, there wouldn't be any specific capital dollars towards a shelter. But there is that $1.5 million going forward in the budget for a future RFP for affordable housing, which is a little bit of some flexible money, but as of right now, it wouldn't be specific for a shelter.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mayberry.
So if I read this right, there's about $1.5 million for expanding affordable housing, and our goal is 50 new units. Are we going to have 50 new units for $1.5 million?
Through the warden to Councillor Mayberry, that would be the goal, yes, when we do issue that RFP. That would be the goal of that funding, unless council were to make a different decision in 2025. But we'd have to issue an RFP first.
When was the last time we've got a housing unit for $30,000?
I don't know if we ever have.
So I'm guessing $1.5 million might be $2 million short, $3 million short?
Through the warden. So I think obviously costs have gone up for all these affordable units. And I will say going forward, we typically were at that $100,000 per affordable unit in terms of the contribution. Obviously that's gone up a little bit in recent years. So we're typically, what I say is about $130,000 per affordable unit, but that does depend on many factors with the proponent. If they're a nonprofit, really depending on the build itself. Does that help?
So I think it would be fair to say, though, that it's highly unlikely that we're going to get 50 units for $1.5 million, based on history.
Through the warden. That is correct, but I will say there is still some projects being pulled forward from 2024. Obviously, actually, there's 3 projects being pulled back forward from 2024 that we'd be getting shovel-ready. But to your point, the $1.5 million, you're likely to get maybe 15 affordable units from. Yep.
Councillor Petrie.
We may not get $1.4 million from our share, but if other partners come to the table, maybe provincial government and federal government had their share, I'm seeing how we're getting closer to that number, and maybe that's the message we need to send is, hey, this is what we can do with ours, and I'm comfortable with that.
Anyone else?
And maybe that brings me to the point too. So we did also top up the second unit program as well as the repair program. So maybe to the point of maybe some different levels of affordability, the second unit program, we are adding $300,000 to that program, which should support an additional 10 affordable units. And then the repair program, we are adding $200,000 to that as well. And that's all coming from reserves. And then you will see a bit there. So we're seeing really negative budget variance there because we are proposing to pull from reserves for all of those capital items there. That brings me to the end, if there's any further questions.
Any other questions? Human Services. One from me, sort of a follow-up there. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this right. So the amount of money that we're budgeting in a given year for affordable housing projects does not necessarily correlate directly to the number of affordable housing units that comes online in that year, because some of the money is spent in previous years that will result in a unit becoming available this year, and some of the money spent in a given year won't result in a unit until another year. So there isn't necessarily the 120,000 per unit is sort of something that we would see over a period of time, not necessarily within a specific year. Is that the correct understanding?
Yeah, that's correct. So sometimes it kind of pulls, it all evens out in the end, but sometimes it pulls forward from a previous year. So you might see more units in one year in comparison to another, just because based on the projects that we're doing, they don't all line up in the given year. So that'd be correct.
Thank you. Any other questions on Human Services or housing before we go on? All right, then I think, what is it now? Woodingford Lodge, Director Dagger.
Yeah, through your warden and 2 members of council, pleased to present to you the 2025 Woodingford Lodge budget. As you will see, that Woodingford Lodge for 2025 will have a $12.7 million impact on the general levy. As you know, our services do include long-term care, respite care, and adult day programs to our residents of Oxford County. When we look at the goals, carrying on to the goals of the 2025 budget package, looking at continuing our assessment of the long-term care needs, certainly we need to look at how we service our residents in long-term care, partnering with our members of the community as well as the county services, including the community paramedicine program, in which we have the opportunity to enhance our service delivery to our residents without transport to hospital. Also looking at the promotion of the quality excellence through accreditation. So currently Woodingford Lodge is going through presently our accreditation process and survey. Certainly the areas of focus at that, and it was indicated through the master plan, is looking at our leadership and governance, looking at our delivery of care models, emergency preparedness, infection control practices, and medication management. So certainly with the outcomes and the reviews of the accreditation process survey, and hopeful for full completion, we will be able to present back some findings to council. Also looking at goals of development of a thorough emergency preparedness program. This is a continuation beyond the COVID pandemic, and especially given the vulnerability of our residents in the long-term care sector, ensuring that we are well prepared and have a very detailed emergency preparedness plan in which we can service those needs of our residents if in the event another emergency was to occur. Beyond that, we also have the opportunity as well to, and are directed through the Fixing Long-Term Care Act, where we have to run a series of codes and drills from an emergency preparedness standpoint, from everything from fire safety to tornado warnings, so on and so forth. So having that emergency preparedness program will certainly have our staff well prepared in the event that there is an emergency that does occur. When we also look at to our goal of development and continuous quality improvement initiative, over the past 2 budget cycles, we've had conversations surrounding the importance of quality and quality improvement. It was also indicated throughout the master plan the need for an enhanced and detailed quality improvement team at Whittingford Lodge. Certainly, when we look at what that program will net to us is certainly making sure that we're in regular compliance, regulatory compliance, my apologies, and legislative compliance with the Ministry of Long-Term Care. When we look over the last 2 budget cycles and bring us to current state, it's certainly important to share with members of council how we have shown some improvements within that service delivery. I'll make mention of our IPAC supervisor, to which we onboarded about 2 years ago. Certainly, you'll see in the budget package with our key performance indicators that we have not had a outbreak of greater than 30 days for the past 3 to 4 years. That is something certainly to celebrate. When we also look at through last budget cycle, when we talked about the nurse practitioner onboarding and having 2 at Whittingford Lodge, the net outcomes of having those 2 nurse practitioners as a part of our medical team has significantly reduced the unnecessary transfer of hospitals of our residents for emergency department visits, keeping them within their home and having care at the right time, right place. Also, as we carry on with our goals for the 2025 budget, looking at evaluating and continuing to evaluate the long-term care needs and services within Oxford County. We've had ongoing conversations with members of council in regards to the service delivery of long-term care in current state. Certainly our commitment to council for 2025 is continuing to evaluate the effectiveness, the efficiencies of long-term care and how we operate. Moreover, looking at the services to which we provide to our residents of Oxford County, enhancing the sustainability and the permanency of our adult day program to ensure that right now where our 10 to 12 individuals are participating in that program, we could potentially increase that with permanent funding. We also have currently 80 individuals in Oxford County on that wait list to be a part of that adult day program. Also looking at enhancement of services in a variety of different ways from supportive mechanisms from our medical team within Whittingford Lodge. When we look at the FTE changes for the proposement for the 2025 budget, you will see that there will be an increase to our recreation aides from a full-time capacity, a part-time recreational aide. You will see an increase to our personal support workers, and want to be clear that this funding is through allied funding and direct hours of care per day funding with no impact to the levy. You will see that there is a decrease in the dietitian there. We are still regulated to have a dietitian on site. We have gone from having our own permanent dietitian to a contract service dietitian, so the needs are still met through regulations. When you look at the point 8 of the Family Transition Program staffing, again, this is dollars that are funded through local priorities funding. That funding is extended through to March of 2025. Local priorities funding is available to us, and again, we have sought that out, just waiting to see if that continuation will go beyond March of 2025. When we look at the capital reserve contributions, we'll see for 2025 a $400,000 increase. You'll see that there will be a net levy increase in variance of 1.4, mostly surrounding increases to staffing that we have brought aboard and costs associated with that and benefits. When we look at the capital projects, certainly I just want to highlight again that $1.283 million. Again, that would be a budget adjustment as earlier discussed and communicated by Director Bugner, and that was outlined on page 21 of the package. When we look at the varying projects and furnishing equipments required at Whittingford Lodge, these are conversations brought forth to council during budget season where we look at replacement of our dining sets, replacement of equipment that we use, mechanical lifts to help service our residents. One of the other drivers to that includes as well security cameras. I'm considering the larger number of price tagged items. The security cameras will provide that security obviously for the residents and the staff of Whittingford Lodge, but I will highlight that this is a phase 1 of a 2 process for a 2-year process for the implementation of those security cameras. And with that, that does conclude the presentation of the Whittingford Lodge 2025 budget, and happy to answer any questions, Warden.
Councillor Palmer.
Through the chair, the warden to Mr. Dager. FTE 2025-09 is a recreation aid. It costs $163,000. Does that include more than just a salary?
Through your warden to Councillor Palmer, so that FTE increase would be for the full-time and part-time funded through the allied funding from the Ministry of Long-Term Care. So again, there's no cost to the levy or impact to the levy. It'd be for 2 positions.
Okay, that's a lot better. Thank you.
Any other questions on long-term care, Whittingford Lodge? So I'm going to suggest then 11:48 that we break for lunch. Now we're not going to get done anytime soon, but I'm going to suggest maybe just a half hour for lunch and get back in here. So come back in here at say 12:20. Nobody's objecting. 12:21, sorry, and we are back from lunch. And the next item up is Corporate Services Department. I will turn it over to Director Bugner.
Thank you, Warden. So starting off, taking a look at corporate services represents 2.9 million of the general levy. That's 3.1%. And the portion of the total county expenses for corporate services is $12.2 million, or 3.8%. So just looking at the divisions within corporate services, we're looking at asset management, or assessment management rather, customer service, information services, information technology, provincial offenses administration, and finance. So we predominantly support internal area municipal services and the public. And the corporate services section in the budget binder starts on page 233. So taking a look at customer service budget, let's take a look here. So it is fully interdepartmentalized out to all of the divisions and departments within the organization. And you can see there that the expenses are declining by just under $92,000 in 2025, and that's because we've migrated one FTE position from customer service to information services. So that position is a business and data policy analyst position, and you'll hear more about that position and what we're planning to do with that, that area of service once we get to the IS budget. So that's predominantly what the change is there. Looking at the goals and objectives for information services, we're looking at supporting implementation of the Asset Management Systems Enhancement Project. That's been on an ongoing basis for a number of years, so that's going to continue. We're looking at upgrades to the water and utility data. This is to create a seamless web geographic information system that enables data sharing across the entire organization. We'll also provide advanced asset modeling capabilities, improved systems architecture, and analysis tools that provide information gathering for better organizational and operational awareness and decision-making. The results will increase efficiencies in daily operations, planning projects, and responding to emergencies. Speaking of emergencies, shortly we will probably be receiving an alert. I think that's a national alert. It's a test, so don't get alarmed if you hear it. It's supposed to happen right around 1 o'clock. So stay tuned for that. So up next on the goals and objectives, we're looking at celebrating some Oxford anniversaries this year in 2025. So we're starting to plan and coordinate events as we speak. We're looking at needing some funds for promotional materials to celebrate 175 years of service for Oxford County since incorporation, 50 years since restructuring, and 25 years since the establishment of the Oxford County Archives. And also, our library system will be celebrating 60 years of service too in 2025. So lots going on to celebrate next year. Also, from an archival perspective, we're looking at continuing some online exhibits in collaboration with the Woodstock Art Gallery. And as well, we're undertaking a records management program review with a view to better managing the county's physical records and digital records and improve our policies and service efficiencies. So taking a look at the budget for information services, we do have a portion of it that's interdepartmentalized this year, and it represents $84,800, and that's related to water wastewater, and that is, Melissa had mentioned earlier about the migration of a position from engineering to IS. So they predominantly work on the GIS systems and related to water wastewater. So that doesn't impact the levy, but it does impact the water and wastewater rates. We are also looking for, as I mentioned, one new FTE to complement our staff to help deliver what we're proposing in 2025, and that is a business and policy analyst position. You might recall that council gave approval to introduce a new position of the same title in last year's budget, and we have found that position to be extremely effective, so much so that we've outgrown the demand for the service. So we're looking at enhancing that service. Similarly, we've heard from, or through the asset management or the Woodingford Lodge Master Plan, that there's a demand for or a need for in the Woodingford Lodge Services business analyst position. So this would help support that. Similarly, we've heard from paramedic services that they need similar support in their area. As well, we're looking at a new initiative in finance that requires a business and policy analyst to do some work for them and improve work processes and achieve efficiencies in retaining some of our revenues related to water and wastewater. So all of that said, and also in conversations with the library recently, I think that it's definitely some areas there of need. So this would be building out our what was intended to be a corporate service position initially to see how much interest or need there would be across the organization for this level of support service, and it has proven itself. So that's why we're bringing it forward in this year's business plan and budget. So in terms of capital, we're looking at an increase here just to outfit the new position with a computer. Other than that, there's no other capital requirements. So taking a look at information technology, we have a continuing goal and objective. It's been on our radar for a number of years, and it's a cybersecurity policy. We're just about at the point where we can continue to just maintain it on a go-forward basis. So it would be updated based on new technology and new threats within the IT community. So we're also looking at increasing our contribution to the asset management plan for IT technology or IT equipment. So that's going up $100,000 in 2025. So in terms of the budget impact, we're looking at some changes here. So we are going to see a reduction in our revenues of $105,000, and that's net. And that's for supporting our area municipalities. One of our area municipalities has decided to implement their own IT service team within their municipality, so our services will no longer be required there. And then we're also looking at restructuring that team. We have certainly recognized over the course of the past couple of years that, with COVID and the increased reliance on technology, and through some of the modernization projects that we've employed during that time, as well as new ones that are coming on stream. We're looking at improving our automation to try to mitigate some of the need for additional staffing. All of that translates into extra support required for IT services. And so even though we will not be supporting that one dedicated FTE position to another municipality in 2025, we do feel that we need that position to maintain the capacity that's required of us. So overall, the budget increase to the interdepartmental charge is $412,000. So that is comprised of that $105,000 loss in revenue, $150,000 increase in software costs, And again, that's just the IT market these days, is just software is going up substantially. 109,000 in salaries and benefits, and that's just the regular movement through the grid, as well as the cost of living increase. And 50,000, as mentioned earlier, about the asset management plan increased contribution. Also included in the IT budget is new projects, replacement projects. That's an annual thing, and that's about standard cost of replacements for a given year. And the other new project is $65,000 for technology upgrades in the council chambers. And so I'll remind you that council passed a resolution in September giving staff direction to prepare a report and report back to council in terms of how we could improve the technology in this meeting room for council's purposes. And so we have provided a new initiative report with this request that addresses that request of staff. So the purpose of this project is really to enhance the transparency and privacy in the council chamber. Staff are recommending 2 to 3 new cameras that automatically focus on the person speaking through their microphone, so it would direct towards the microphone that's being engaged at the time, rather than having to employ a staff member to sit here and navigate the camera around to whoever is speaking at the time. We're also going to, at the same time, address the concerns about audio quality that's been raised primarily from the gallery at the rear of the council chamber, but also within the chamber too, to make sure you can hear certain individuals with maybe softer voices. So going on then from information technology on to provincial offenses. So taking a look at their goals and objectives for 2025, the first two, you'll feel like this is a broken record. We're still trying to address some legislative changes that were implemented or at least announced prior to COVID even, that still have yet to be fully deployed. Starting off with the implementation of prosecution as a detailed prosecution by a municipal prosecutor as opposed to by the Crown. So that's in progress, as well as implementing changes to the early resolution model. So again, now this one is still to be more clearly defined by the Attorney General before we can determine really how to approach that one. There are 2 new goals and objectives here, both being related to automated speed enforcement. The first one to assess the space at the POA office to determine whether administration of an administrative penalty process can be accommodated within the existing space, or if there's going to have to be major renovations, that would be part of the costing that we would be bringing forward to council in 2025 to make a determination in terms of whether we proceed with the program. Similarly, the second one is, again, just in consultation with other municipalities who have started a speed enforcement program within their community, just to see what is involved, what the costs associated would be, what the projected benefits are looking like, and things like that. So again, that information that will be gleaned through that process will be presented to council in 2025 for consideration of deploying a program in 2026. So taking a look at the budget. Now, this is a budget that typically in the past had generated a net revenue for the county, although since just prior to COVID, that kind of dissipated and is now on the negative side, so it does have a levy impact, a slight levy impact. This year, we're looking at a levy impact of $210,000, so that's up about $20,000 from last year, and it's predominantly salaries, just increasing with cost of living and with the grid. So taking a look at finance, our goals and objectives for finance in 2025 are reviewing the water and wastewater billing processes. So this is what I was mentioning before, that we really need a business data and policy analyst to assist with. So we're going to be reviewing the water and wastewater billing processes, various steps of the process to ensure accuracy, efficiency, and compliance with regulatory standards. We're going to do an internal review that will concentrate on the flow of information between the billing providers, operators, being internal and external, finance staff, GIS, and customers. The goal then is to identify inefficiencies and mitigate risks of error and streamline the water and wastewater billing process. So, all said, this project is dependent on that one FTE. So, we don't have the internal capacity to do this otherwise. So, that's a requirement to fulfill that goal and objective. The next one on the list is implement the payroll and scheduling system. So you might recall in the 2024 budget, Council gave approval to start a project to review and find a payroll and scheduling system to replace the existing, because our existing scheduling software that are used for most of our services is coming to end of life by the end of 2025 rather. So yes, we've gone through a bit of a process this year, and we're in the procurement process as we speak. So we're hoping to have a solution determined early in 2025 and full deployment by the end of the year. 2025 Asset Management Plan, as I mentioned in the earlier presentation, we are due for an update in 2025 to remain compliant with the regulations. And this one is to establish proposed levels of service for all of the asset classes. Now, this program will be largely driven by community input, so there's going to be quite a marketing campaign getting out there seeking the public's opinion in terms of what level of service they would like for the different asset and infrastructure requirements. So that will then help the Capital Planning Division to determine what to bring forward for Council's consideration. There's going to be a lot of information involved in that process, which will likely require engaging Council in a workshop as opposed to just presenting proposals to Council. So it's going to be a bit of a learning curve to get a sense of, how do you balance the community's needs and how can we balance the financial requirements of that standard. So again, we will be planning that, and the due date for the update is July 1st of 2025. And in terms of our budget, this is another area that's fully departmentalized out, and we can see that the increase in our interdepartmental charge is $182,868. That is largely driven by salaries and benefits are $382,000 of that, and the rest is just increased costs in materials and software in general. Now, in terms of FTE changes, we have 2 FTE requests within the Finance Division. We are looking at the need for a financial analyst for capital planning purposes. So due to significant growth in our annual capital spending, driven by aggressive development and expanding the need for municipal services, has really required more support from a capital planning perspective. Recent legislative changes have added complexities as well as new reporting requirements that have resulted in significant increases in staff time to manage effectively and efficiently. So in terms of workload, this FTE will ensure the workload is more balanced while ensuring that business continuity through cross-training also aligns with time-sensitive tasks are completed to and efficiently during periods of absence. So also allow for day-to-day functions currently being completed by the manager, more capacity then to concentrate on management roles and responsibilities as opposed to the daily tasks of the division. The other position that we're requesting in 2025 is a supervisor of payroll. So this position would be responsible for ensuring corporate compliance with federal and provincial legislation as well as corporate policies and collective agreements as they relate to payroll. The role works closely with HR, scheduling, managers, and staff across the county to ensure that over 950 employees, over 23 business divisions and seven different collective agreements and non-union agreements are paid on a biweekly basis. So just managing that in itself is quite a feat. The responsibilities of this leadership role would fall under the manager of finance, who directly supervises payroll, in addition to overseeing accounts receivable, accounts payable, budgeting, and reporting. Our staff complement for payroll has not changed for over a decade. We've had 2 FTEs for over 10 years, and with the increased workforce, the increased complexity of a lot of our services and how we have designed our collective agreements and non-union agreements has really demanded more support in this area. So I think that's it for finance. Taking a look at, I don't know if we can go directly to library at this point and come back to general.
Yeah, I'm going to check for questions first, and then I think really it'll be up to you guys which one you want to do next. Questions from council on the corporate services? Not seeing any. Yeah, which one makes sense for you to do next? Library?
Yes, please.
All right, library.
Okay, so looking at library, the library levy in 2025 is proposed to be $5.7 million. The library, the total expenses rather for library is $6.5 million. So library starts on page 330 if you're following along in the budget binder. Our goals and objectives set out by the library board include organizational review and onboarding. So this is going to be an internal process in response to the library being at a critical growth stage and intends to optimize staff in order to meet the future demands. The library strategic plan has been developed and implemented a strategic approach to attract, retain, and develop employees and volunteers to enhance and sustain the library system's service excellence. Through that, we feel that we just need to better position ourselves on a go-forward basis. The goals of the review will be to design an effective organizational structure, develop and strengthen the onboarding and training process, and develop processes to assist with change management. And again, change management is something that we're seeing ongoing throughout the corporation. And again, as I mentioned earlier, this is something that the business and data policy analyst position can support as they bring with them project management skills as well. We'll also be looking at branch level payment solutions, and this project is going to be in collaboration again, through the business data and policy analyst position, who's coordinating with all areas of the organization that collect any form of payment, just to better manage that from an e-commerce perspective. The next goal is communication strategy for patron management and brand awareness and growth. So just trying to increase community awareness of the library's programs, services, and collections. We'll be working closely with strategic communications to develop a communication strategy focused on deepening relationships with existing and new members, and increasing usership and community engagement. And then I mentioned earlier that the library system is going to be celebrating their 60th year anniversary this year, so you will see some expenses included in their budget related to that celebration in collaboration with those others that are county related. In terms of FTE changes, we are asking for minor increases in full-time or in permanent staff changes. Point 3, the library summer students. So this is a summer student that has been temporary in nature in the past, so it's just taking it and making it permanent. We just know from our summer reading program for children out there, there's just much more demand for that and summer programming, that we need to expand the hours just to prepare a little more before the programming and after the programming for preparation and tear down. So that will help in that regard. Similarly, we're looking for increasing our hours in library programming support by half an FTE. Again, we're not adding new bodies here, just increasing the hours to help support those programs. And then the 2 on the front of that 2.8 increase in FTEs is the mobile outreach unit, Ox on the Run. So that has been a temporary allocation since we started piloting this program a number of years ago. So looking at the budget impacts, we do have an increase in our capital contribution to narrow that funding gap for our asset management plan. So that's an increase of $40,000 on the levy, as well as library non-statutory development charge exemptions. That's about a $75,000 increase on the levy. And the statutory development charge exemptions is another $62,000 on the levy. And the Ox on the Run project, in total, $184,000, and that too is on the levy. We did consider taking a portion from reserve in 2025. However, in a way of phasing in, if it's potentially going to become a permanent fixture within our library services on a go-forward basis, it would certainly lessen the burden on next year. However, it's fully funded by the taxation, by the levy in 2025 as it stands, as approved by the board. So that's it for library. Unless there's any questions, we can pause there before we go on to general.
Questions from council on the library? Councillor Gilvasey.
Through you, Warden. I know the Ox on the Run program was a 2-year pilot project. Now it's going into a 3rd-year pilot project. When would we ever see a decision on this one way or another?
Through the Warden and Councillor Gilvasey, the board has extended it 1 year because they needed that extra year for data to determine whether, in fact, it would be sustainable. And so they have committed to giving consideration to its permanency partway through 2025.
Councillor Petrie.
Thank you, Warren. Through you. Yeah, just as a member of the library board, I will say the library the board did have some great deliberations, and there was another item that was on the original budget, which was expanding the technology program, the builder space, and so they felt that one or the other, and so they made the choice that they want to make sure that the Ox on the Run was fully funded, and they deferred that other program to try to make sure that they were being responsible and trying to meet the, last year was a big increase with after the surplus went away, and so there's there was certainly consolidation on the board that was the way forward. So there was definitely debate on how to try to save funding and the priority of programs.
Anything else on library? So general budget then, and back to Director Bugner.
Thank you. So the general budget starts on page 268 of your budget binder, if you care to follow through on that. In terms of the general budget, it refers to any taxation that's outside of a levy. So this is, excuse me, it shows the property taxes collected in lieu of taxation and supplementaries. So that's included in there. There's about a $21,000 decline in the revenue that we expect in 2025. User fee charges, these are the $6.2 million there in user fee charges. That relates to the area municipal debt repayment obligations, and it's totally offset lower down under expenses where we pay it out to whatever the lending agency is. We also have the really driving factor in this budget here is the $4.8 million in the development charge exemptions. So that's really the increase there, the $4.9 million. So in terms of the grants for this year, do we have a slide on? We do have a slide on that. So the grants will be presented to Council on Monday, November 25th. So we'll be able to demonstrate to you, as specifically requested, who has made an application and which ones are being supported by staff. Okay, so we'll have more on that. In terms of conservation authorities, we have, for the purposes of preparing a budget, we have added an average of 3% to each one of the conservation authorities, with the exception of Upper Thames. We had missed their Category 3 program budget in 2024, so you'll see that our forecast is slightly higher than what the actual budget amount that was approved was. So, of course, we have built in extra in 2025 to make up for that, that variance in 2024. So we have received Grand River and Catfish Creek Conservation Authorities is on the budget adjustments chart as it was presented to you earlier today. And we will have the Upper Thames and Long Point on Monday's agenda for you as well. In terms of Southwestern Public Health budget, we have taken a 5% increase year over year for the purposes of our draft budget. We understand that the Public Health Board is considering their budget within the next couple of weeks, so we should hopefully get a specific determination what that impact will be on our 2025 levy prior to council approval in December. So in terms of council budget, then, we'll carry on. And if you want to look at the details of the council budget, you can find them on page 274. There we go. Okay, so it's good. It works, right? All right, so taking a look at the council's budget for 2025 in comparison to 2024, we're looking at a 3.7% increase there, $24,000. It's largely salaries and benefits, and then we've added $6,000 in the contracted services line, and that is to prepare. That is in response to the grant program transition from the previous grant process. So the $6,000 is just for sponsorships that council can approve throughout the course of the year that were otherwise considered in grants in the prior year's budgets. So as an example, the Youth Robotic Challenge was a $5,000 sponsorship every year. So the $6,000 would allow enough for that, as well as, so if the Plowman's Association or something like that were to come forward again, the Agriculture Awards of Excellence, those types of things are covered then by this budget. And that's, if there's any questions on the councillor's budget, then now would be a good time. Okay. Great, yep. Okay, so Ben has asked if I would continue and speak to court security. Court security is, I'm not sure what page it is on the package. However, it is increasing, as I mentioned earlier through the highlights presentation, that it's increasing by $40,494 year over year. And that's reflective of the 2023 actual costs of court security for the County of Oxford courthouse. And net of any court security transportation funding that we get from the province, of course. And just to reiterate what I said this morning, this just gets levied to 7 of the 8 area municipalities, the exception being Woodstock, because what we collect in terms of that revenue, that $123,430 would then be transferred to the city to offset their Woodstock Police Service court security costs. Any questions?
Not seeing any. So staff are suggesting that's as far as we go today. Pick up with the rest of it on Monday. No? I thought that was... Maybe not. I don't know. Not a lot.
All right, thank you. Moving on to human resources. And the more detailed HR budget and business plan starts on page 311 of your budget package. So HR represents $2 million or 0.6% of total county expenses, which is charged out interdepartmentally to all of the other county departments. HR delivers several different services to all of our departments, such as health and safety and employee health and return to work services, labor relations with our 5 distinct union groups, talent acquisition and staff retention, learning and development, and total compensation and rewards. Next slide, please. All of our 2025 budget goals support our strategic plan in terms of the initiative related to attracting, retaining, and engaging staff. Council recently received an update regarding implementation of our diversity, equity, and inclusion internal action plan, and we will obviously continue to advance those priorities over the coming 2025 budget year. Succession planning and leadership development is a significant focus for us in 2025, and you will see the new initiative report in front of you, which I will highlight a bit further in a moment. Additionally, one of our 2025 goals is to develop an overall employee feedback strategy. And I can explain that a little bit more. Over the years, we've implemented various ways to collect employee feedback at different points in time. So we do exit interviews, which obviously seeks feedback from employees after they've already departed our organization. We've recently implemented new employee feedback surveys to collect feedback from new hires over the course of their first year. We've done employee engagement surveys at various intervals, usually in 3 or 4 year timeframes. And so, over the years, it's been a bit of a fragmented approach. So we want to take a step back next year and develop an overall strategy for how we really listen to our employees' feedback. The goal of developing that strategy is really twofold. One is employee retention, obviously listening to staff and seeing if there are areas that we can address to aid in employee retention, but also in terms of continuous improvement and innovation, which again is cited in our strategic plan, empowering staff and building a culture of innovation. So how do we seek that feedback to make sure we're listening to staff across the organization to see where improvements can be made, ultimately leading to overall staff retention. Our next goal, which does have a small budgetary impact of, I believe it's $8,000, is to work with an external specialist to update our most commonly utilized physical and cognitive demands analysis. And those analysis really outline the physical demands required of some of our positions. So for example, our paramedics have a physically and cognitively demanding job, and we use that information in terms of our disability management and return to work program. So it's very important that we have up-to-date physical and cognitive analysis on file. In terms of our human resources information system, as Lynn just mentioned, Council approved new payroll and scheduling software through the 2024 corporate services budget. As we've embarked on that project as an organization, we've realized that there is the potential to include a new HRIS system as part of that as well, with no additional budgetary impact at this time. Through this, we would see efficiencies in how we process all of our employee information. Obviously, that flows through to payroll and scheduling. So having one system definitely has efficiencies so that we don't have multiple interfaces between those various systems. Lastly then, I would like to speak a little bit to our new initiative, which starts on page 318 of your budget package. We were fortunate to have Council approve a new Learning and Development Specialist, FTE, in our 2024 budget and business plan. And that individual has obviously been hired and has been spending a lot of time evaluating our current learning and development programs, looking where we have gaps and developing new proposed programs. We knew that we had a gap in terms of what we provide for leadership development across the organization. I think it goes without saying that having effective leaders is so crucial to employee retention and employee engagement across our organization. And we really do feel strongly that we have to invest in our current leaders and those we view as emerging leaders, and those having future leadership potential within the organization. So our new initiative proposes 2 streams of leadership development programming, one for selected members of our current leadership team, so those we refer to as our extended leadership team and obviously our senior management team, and then a different stream for selected emerging leaders. So for those people we see as having future leadership potential within the organization. Both programs will be quite comprehensive and include a variety of ways of learning, individual learning, workshops, coaching, things like stretch assignments. And then in addition to that, a further subset of approximately 4 to 6 participants will be selected to attend an external leadership development program through Ivy, which is municipally focused. So in terms of budgeting for this program, historically, we have actually budgeted $50,000 for leadership development initiatives, which was always to be funded from our training reserve. However, in the last number of years, not having the resources to be able to devote to developing and maintaining these programs, we haven't accessed those reserve dollars. Now that we do have a dedicated HR staff person to support these initiatives, and we do anticipate, ongoing development opportunities, we are proposing that we fund the program costs from the training reserve, but then replenish that reserve by $20,000 in 2025 through the interdepartmental charges. So overall, for human resources, a 5% budget increase, which is really being driven, partly by that $20,000 increase in training, but mostly by cost of living, grid increases, and benefit increases for staff. So happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council? Councillor Gilvezi.
Through you, Warden. I just have one question. I think the being creative with employee feedback is really important, so I just wanted to highlight that. But when you do surveys, are they anonymous, or do employees have to sign in?
Yes, good question. Through the warden to Councillor Gilvezi. They are definitely anonymous, and when we have done employee engagement surveys in the past, we've actually utilized an organization that specializes in employee surveys, and that's what they focus on. And we definitely guarantee anonymity. Otherwise, we know that staff are less likely to participate.
Any other questions? All right, that's it. I guess a couple of reminders before I turn over to staff if they want to wrap anything else up. We will be back here on Monday at 9:30 to finish off presentations. And just a reminder also that notice of motions to modify this budget are due December 5th at 4:30 p.m., correct? December 5th at 4:30 p.m. if you want to change this. And I guess, is there anything else, Ben or Lynn, that you want to highlight before we wrap up?
Sorry, Warden, could you just repeat that last part there? I just want to make sure it was clear on the deadline.
Oh, it's the notice of motion deadline to modify the budget is December 5th at 4:30 p.m. to the clerk. Okay? I think it's in here.
I was just going to say, it's in the last.
Yeah, it's in the package somewhere.
I just thought I heard something
yeah,
different.
No, that's fine. Yeah, absolutely.
We'll just finish off this presentation.
Okay.
And you'll see it there.
Thank you, Warden. So yeah, just taking a look at a few wrap-up items here that we wanted to share with council. So we've got some pending item budget adjustments, conservation authorities, I mentioned that already, so you know what to expect at the next meeting. Southwest Public Health, again, pending their draft budget or their approved budget information. In terms of summary, our next budget meeting, as the warden has already mentioned, Monday morning, 9:30 a.m., November 25th. And notices of motion, again, there's noted at the bottom of the slide. Notice of motion deadline is December 5th at 4:30 p.m. I believe that's noted on the agenda page as well. So, and again, for any public that's following along, we encourage them to do so. And they can pick up presentations and a copy of the budget on the county's website using the URL there on the screen. So thank you all for your participation today, and we look forward to meeting you again on Monday.
Councillor Accione.
Yes, thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Schaefer. Resolved that the information provided in the 2025 business plans and budget presentation be received and referred to 2025 budget and business plan deliberations.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Consideration of correspondence. Councillor Schaefer.
Thank you, Warden. Through you, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Martin. Resolved that the Grand River Conservation Authority and Catfish Creek Conservation Authority 2025 draft budgets be received and referred to 2025 budget and business plan deliberations.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And bylaws, Councillor Petrie.
Thank you, Warden. Through you, moved by myself, second by Councillor Tate, that resolve that bylaws 6680-2024 be given a first and second reading.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Councillor Petrie.
Thank you again. Through you, Warden, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Martin, resolved by bylaw number 6680-2024 be given a third and final reading.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Warden. Moved by Peterson, second by Councillor Gavezi, resolved that special council meeting of November 20th, 2024 be adjourned until next special council meeting of November 25th, 2024 at 9:30 a.m.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?